This one's gonna be sad. It's like watching two hospital patients have at it. The Wii U versus the PlayStation Vita. Not only were these both two failures, but they were both failures at the same time. In North America, both of these launched the exact same year, 2012. And they both kind of had very similar problems, and they ended up selling around the same. The PS Vita ended up doing better than the Wii U, but it was still not doing too hot at all. They were successes in the hearts of those who owned them. At least from the perspective of, during the 8th generation of game consoles, anybody who owned a Vita, anybody who owned a Wii U, everybody was just trying to be like, oh my god, I love my Vita. Oh my god, I love my Wii U. It's doing all this stuff and I love it so. And yeah, I don't doubt that. But when you look back at these things retrospectively, it is pretty easy to see where these things fell short in many areas and why they failed to begin with. I genuinely feel like the PS Vita failed primarily because it was in the wrong place at the wrong time. This feels like something where if it launched these days and, you know, obviously with specs of today's era and whatnot, I think this would definitely perform much better. Back in 2012, I kind of feel like this launched right when people were kind of like, why would I buy a handheld game system? I have my smartphone. The 3DS at least had Nintendo IP to back it up. The PlayStation Vita, it definitely had some solid titles on it, but it didn't really have those games that like, oh my god, you need a Vita for. And I think that's a problem that both of these systems had. Like, if you already owned either of these systems, you for sure had games to play on them. Great games, in fact. But games to warrant straight up spending hundreds of dollars to buy these systems, it's not so much. Plus, I feel like the 3DS, especially when it started getting different models and price cuts and, you know, lower end models like the 2DS, I feel like the 3DS kind of warranted a little more of like oh yeah, I want that for 1 or 2 games and, you know, that's it, I'll throw it in the drawer. The PS Vita feels a lot more like, yeah, if you're gonna buy this thing, you better can use it. It feels very premium. It feels like an enthusiast device. And a handheld like this hitting in 2012, I mean, the 3DS even struggled with mobile gaming kind of overtaking that handheld market a bit too much. It wouldn't be until the Nintendo Switch hit in 2017 that I think people were a lot more open to the idea of a dedicated handheld again. And even then, you know, the Nintendo Switch had the gimmick of, oh, well, this isn't just a dedicated handheld, it's also a home console, and all of the games you play on your home console are now on the go. But when Sony unveiled the PS Vita in early 2011, originally when it was codenamed the NGP, I mean, this thing looked like it was solving all of the damn problems with the PSP. The PlayStation Portable was a great success. I mean, it sold like 80 million units. How is that not a success? But I think Sony always looked at it like, yeah, that's great, but they lost to Nintendo. You know, the Nintendo DS sold basically twice as many units. And I think they were looking at how many units Nintendo usually sells of their handhelds. And with the PlayStation brand being one of the top brands in all of gaming, you know, like they would generally always win every generation, selling over 100 million units of their home consoles. I think they were expecting the PSP to do far better than it actually did, which is insane. You sell 80 million units and you're like, oh wow, not good enough. Well, from my experience, whenever I talk to people who owned a PSP, the PSP, I think, was instantly super appealing, really impressive, really attractive. And the people that ended up actually buying a PSP were like, this is awesome, and they'd play a game or two on it, and they were like, this is cool, but they didn't really stick with it all too much. In my opinion, the PSP's game library, as awesome as it is, I always find it to be a little weird because the PSP ends up feeling kind of like a jack of all trades, master of none. Like it was kind of poised as the PlayStation 2 for your pocket. And then when you get it, a lot of the games that were like, oh man, this looks like a PS2 game on the PSP. Many times they were kind of watered down ports. Like if you saw a PS2 game on the PSP, it was either the actual PS2 game, which was actually a lot more rare than I ever thought, or it was a version made specifically for PSP, or it was the handheld version, which means it was pretty much a PSP version of like the Nintendo DS version of said game. And oftentimes when the PSP would get a home console game, like through and through, it's just a home console game, no bones about it, it would often be kind of like a bit of a not fun version of it, you know? Like, you don't have a second analog stick on the PSP, so camera control isn't as good. It would often be missing content. And then when you'd actually get like a handheld game on PSP, you know, when the PSP would get something like fucking My Spanish Coach or whatever, it just didn't really feel like it fit, you know? Like, the PSP was meant to be, oh man, it's a home console to go, but when it would actually get home console games to go, they were kind of watered down. You know, it used UMD discs, and then when you try to play the handheld games, it's just like, well, the PSP uses damn discs. That means, like, it's just like these things can scratch, they can skip. If you shake the PSP too much, oh man, your game might freeze. The PSP wasn't the greatest handheld device, and it wasn't the greatest home console device. You know, it was kind of like in this middle ground, and obviously you're gonna have that when you have something as ambitious as the PSP. And overall, I would say the PSP succeeded at what it set out to do, but I do kind of feel like it ended up being a situation where once you got the PSP in your hands, you're like, oh yeah, yeah, this is awesome. You play it for a bit and, you know, it kind of wears off and you kind of end up going back to your Nintendo DS. I don't know. Well, the PS Vita aimed to fix a lot of the PSP's shortcomings. Firstly, we have a second analog stick. And secondly, I think Sony definitely wanted to kind of make the PS Vita this all-purpose device. That's why they put a damn rear touchpad on the back, you know, because everything uses that, so, you know, good for them, you know. Oh man, all bases are covered. Now you got a camera on the back, you have a front touchscreen, makes it so then you can definitely imagine a lot of different types of games working on here. They upped the specs to make this not a PS2 to go, but a PS3 to go. Oh, it wasn't as powerful as a PS3, but with a screen this small, I mean, it damn well looked like it. One of the first games they demoed on the PS Vita was Uncharted, and that was like a game series that's like, oh, wow, unfathomable to picture that on a handheld device at the time. Like, that was incredible. They ditched the UMD discs of the PSP for just straight up game cards. They also announced that there would be a 3G capable version of this device, which meant that, you know, like, you could sign up for a cell phone plan, basically, so then you could access the internet wherever you go. I personally think that was a little stupid. I mean, I think this right here is the 3G model of the PS Vita. I just feel like at that point, why not just have a mobile hotspot? Why do you have to create an entirely separate model of the device that can do 3G? Like, who the hell wants a data plan for a game console? Honestly, responses were fairly decent regarding the Vita, or the NGP at the time. And when it launched in early 2012, I honestly think this is one of the best launch lineups I've ever seen. From Sony alone, you got Uncharted Golden Abyss at launch, which, that's wild. Mod Nation Racers Road Trip, Hot Shots Golf World Invitational, Wipeout 2048. They had so much stuff they threw on the Vita at launch. I mean, Uncharted alone probably would have been good enough. Then from third parties, you had Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3, Rayman Origins, Touch My Katamari. Like, oh my God, there was so much stuff on the Vita at launch. The problem is, in my opinion, I think they kind of just blew their load right then and there. I mean, 2012 was a pretty decent year for the PS Vita, all things considered, but I don't really think they hit the highs of launch day. Later that year, we got a couple of third-party exclusives with Assassin's Creed 3 Liberation and Call of Duty Black Ops Declassified. Black Ops Declassified is bad. I actually played through that entire game, which doesn't really have much of a campaign. I mean, there is like a single player thing you can do for like 2 hours, and then that's it. I mean, it's cool to have like a fully featured, in quotes, fully featured, not really, but still, Call of Duty game in the palm of your hands in 2012, right alongside Black Ops 2. I mean, I don't know, man. I mean, it just kind of gets to a point that, like, I don't know why you would go out of your way to make a brand new Call of Duty game for the Vita when, like, honestly, like, I think just, like, porting Modern Warfare, like the first one, to the Vita would have done just as good, if not better. And that's an actual game people like. And I kind of have the same opinion with Assassin's Creed 3 Liberation. You know, I commend them for creating, like, an exclusive Assassin's Creed on the Vita, but it's very obviously, like, some shitty little side game. I mean, it's not, like, shitty, but it's more so kind of like, you know, like, it's obviously a lower budget, who gives a shit side game. And that was a problem with the PSP, in my opinion. There were a lot of big names on the Vita, much like with the PSP. The problem is a lot of the exclusive games were kind of like B-tier versions of the console games. You look at what Nintendo did with the 3DS and with their other platforms like the DS and Game Boy Advance, all that stuff. When they would put one of their franchises on the handheld, it wasn't, oh, this is the shitty handheld version. It was the next entry in that franchise. Yes, certain things would be downgraded, but Nintendo always considered like the handheld versions of their game to still be like important parts of that franchise. Whereas you look at Uncharted Golden Abyss, which is a fine Uncharted game, like it's not bad, but it wasn't developed by Naughty Dog, and then they don't include it in like the Uncharted Nathan Drake collection in 2015 for the PS4, and it's still not available anywhere else other than the Vita. They obviously don't give a shit about this game. And that's because Uncharted Golden Abyss doesn't matter. Which you can say that about a lot of the Vita entries in many of these series. These games don't matter. Even in 2013, one of the biggest games on the Vita that year was Killzone Mercenary. Well, yeah, this is a very impressive looking game for the Vita, but it's just, you don't need to play it. Story-wise, it's kind of just like this little side story that takes place throughout Killzone 1, 2, and 3, and that's what the gameplay feels like. It feels like kind of like, oh, a little party platter Killzone game. Here's a bunch of little vignettes to experience. And I beat that game too, and I barely remember a single damn thing from that game other than, oh, this is okay. It's a competent first-person shooter, much like Uncharted Golden Abyss. It's a competent Uncharted game. You look over at the 3DS, Mario Kart 7. Yes, like, oh, it doesn't have as many characters as something like Mario Kart Wii. Oh, the graphics aren't as good. But, like, it's still Mario Kart 7. Mario Kart Wii was Mario Kart 6. It has just as many courses. It has 16 new courses, just like Mario Kart Wii did. 16 retro tracks, and, you know, a full online mode, all of this stuff. Fire Emblem Awakening was the next Fire Emblem game. It wasn't, oh, here's a watered down little side story in the Fire Emblem universe. That's just how a lot of the Vita exclusives felt like. So while it seemed like you were getting home console quality stuff on the Vita, and even though that was the case in many instances on the Vita, for a lot of the biggest games that define this platform, while they looked home console quality, the games themselves were a grade below. And I think that's just the thing. The Vita, it didn't really feel like you were missing out on much if you didn't own one. Sony did attempt to salvage the Vita throughout the years. They put out a slim redesign of the Vita, and that came alongside a Vita version of Borderlands 2, and I believe around that time, they also put out the God of War collection. They started to try to do like a bunch of like, oh, kind of like how the PS3 had the HD collections of stuff like, oh, Jak and Daxter, Ratchet and Clank. They ended up creating Vita collections of a lot of those types of games, kind of to just fill out the library, especially like after 2013 when they were like, all right, we don't really feel confident enough to put out AAA exclusives on this thing anymore. They tried putting out the PlayStation TV, which was kind of this small little set-top box that was internally a PlayStation Vita. So they were kind of trying to take the Vita ecosystem and try to make something different out of it. A feature that a lot of PSP users got a lot of use out of was the TV out capabilities, how you could buy cable to connect your PSP to the TV, so then you could play all your games on the big screen. The Vita never had cables released for it. However, the PlayStation TV was pretty much like a dedicated set-top box that you could play Vita games on it. Not all Vita games. Yeah, the PlayStation TV also failed. I think these days, if you hack a PS TV, you can get a lot of use out of it, but straight out of the box, I think that thing was damn near useless, I'm gonna be honest. I'd honestly say like half of the PS Vita games that released are officially compatible with the PlayStation TV. A lot of them just straight up don't work, and a lot of them, there's no reason why they shouldn't work. I don't know why some of them don't work. The ones that like, oh, they use the touchscreen too much, or the camera, sure, whatever. But that's the weird thing about the PlayStation TV. They bundled it with a DualShock 3, the PlayStation 3's controller. The PS TV was compatible with the DualShock 4 from the PS4, and that has a little touchpad on there. So you could have made it so then, oh, the touchpad works with Vita games. You can use the touchscreen that way. Hell, there's even an option in the menus of the PlayStation TV to do this really clunky thing where like, oh, like you can use the analog stick to draw on the screen as if you were touching it. So it's just like, there are workarounds, but no, for some reason, they didn't include a DualShock 4 in the package. They only included a DualShock 3. And for a lot of games, that they just said, it's not working with the PlayStation TV. I don't know. But yeah, in addition, you know what's the stupidest thing about the PlayStation TV? Barely any media apps work. It's like you pretty much market this thing as like an Apple TV or Roku TV kind of competitor, or at the very least, like it seems like it, calling it the PlayStation TV, and then it doesn't work with Netflix. Like, why? What are we doing here? Remember when I said the Vita was an enthusiast's device? That's pretty much all it became in its later years. And honestly, it did have a pretty long lifespan, all things considered. For a failed console, it lasted quite a while. I mean, it kind of became like an indie game machine or a JRPG machine. I remember limited run games got their start pretty much making physical Vita games. And I know a lot of people that kept the Vita alive by buying a lot of these smaller PSN titles. In the end, was the Vita a failed system? Yes. But I'd say in many ways, it became a far more beloved fan favorite device throughout the years. It didn't have a long lifespan when it came to getting like big amounts of support, but I think it had a pretty decently long lifespan, all things considered, when you consider all of the games that were releasing on it well into its life. I think this is just a cool little handheld, to be honest. Like it's fun to hold. It feels so nice. It feels like such a premium device. On an unrelated note, yeah, we might as well call this Fisher-Price versus Apple. The Wii U has a somewhat similar lifespan here. I mean, it got unveiled at E3 2011, and I just remember everybody being fairly underwhelmed. I think any Nintendo fan that was like going apeshit over this thing, I feel like we were all kind of lying to ourselves there. I think I went into the Wii U reveal expecting so much. And what I got was just enough to be like, all right. You know, I tried to be like super excited over seeing the fucking trailer where they were playing Wii Sports Golf and they put the Wii U gamepad on the ground. I'm like, oh my God. And I think that demonstration was enough for people to be like, oh, okay, I guess that's something, you know? But overall, like, the Wii U, it was positioned as an all-in-one device. It was positioned as something that casuals and hardcore gamers could both enjoy. The best of both worlds. In the end, I don't think it satisfied anybody. You know what I don't miss from this era? How long it took for these damn consoles to release. This thing was revealed at E3 2011, didn't launch until November 2012. That is absurd. That's so much time to just lose interest in this thing, I'm gonna be honest. And I just don't think Nintendo did a damn thing with that time. Like, pretty much from E3 2011 to E3 2012, there really wasn't much new stuff we learned about concerning the Wii U. There were bits and bobs, but like there was nothing, man. And then at E3 2012, they said like, oh, we're gonna do a grand re-unveiling of the Wii U. We admit we definitely kind of flunked up the original reveal and people were left with more questions than answers. All right, we'll re-unveil it. They just did the same damn thing again. They didn't do anything. They just reiterated the Wii U is our next console. I already know that, but most people didn't, because the way they showed off the Wii U, the console was all the way in the background, the controller was the main focus. I kinda get it, but the Wii U sounds like an accessory. It doesn't help that the Wii had a billion stupid-ass controllers, so when you show something called the Wii U, and it's just a big stupid-ass controller, what do you think the general audience is gonna think? Hell, I think even hardcore gamers that are into this kind of stuff had that question. Like, they're like, what is this thing? Is it just a controller add-on for the Wii? Ugh, there is so much wrong with the Wii U reveal. And moving into the launch period, there just wasn't a ton that was overly exciting. At E3 2012, they revealed Pikmin 3 for Wii U, which was cool as hell. I mean, the Pikmin fans were happy. I was happy. I love Pikmin. But in the grand scheme of things, especially in 2012, definitely more of a niche franchise. And they showed off New Super Mario Bros. U, which, okay, new 2D Mario game, those are always fun, but at this time, like, it was already kind of like, okay, like, show me something new, show me something big. And New Super Mario Bros. U wasn't that. There really wasn't anything surprising about that game. I would say in terms of like games shown off that appeared around launch time, Sony definitely wins that round with the Vita. I mean, like having Uncharted at launch, that is a great showcase game. Even if it's a B-grade Uncharted, it's still 10 times better than New Super Mario Bros. U, which is a decent game. It's fun. It's 2D Mario, but that's all it is. And we already had a 2D Mario on the Wii with New Super Mario Bros. Wii, and New Super Mario Bros. U wasn't doing a ton different from that game. From the very start, the Wii U was just not a super compelling piece of hardware. And the games they showed off for it, while many of them looked and were good, many of them were kind of the same thing that you could get on other platforms or older Nintendo consoles. Like New Super Mario U was a solid 2D Mario game, but it didn't really do anything all too compelling or different from New Super Mario Bros. Wii. So when the Wii U launched, the launch lineup of games, I don't think was like bad or anything, but much like the hardware itself, it wasn't a super compelling lineup. It did the job. There was stuff to play. There was a variety of games, but like, who the hell cared? But as time progressed, the amount of exclusives on the Wii U, obviously grew. The amount of multi-platform third-party games obviously shrunk. But unlike the PS Vita, Nintendo kept at it with the Wii U. Even if they couldn't put out many games at all in one year, you would at least get a handful of very quality titles. And many of these games were damn good. I don't really think they were system sellers when the system itself was just not what people wanted. But the games are obviously solid titles. I mean, they ported most of the biggest Wii U exclusives over to Nintendo Switch, and that became one of the best-selling consoles of all time. Its best-selling game is a damn Wii U game. Now, I would definitely make an argument that the games Nintendo put out on Wii U, many of them could be system sellers, but I do think, either they came out too late, or there were a couple little problems with when they came out, or the fact that they were the only game to come out for months or whatever. Like Mario Kart 8 was the Wii U's major system seller, but that was like the only damn game for months. Like I remember that game came out in 2014. You had Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze released in February. Then you had to wait till late May for Mario Kart 8. And then you had to wait till September for the next major Nintendo first-party title. So there really wasn't a ton of momentum with the Wii U, as good as some of the games were. And on top of that, again, as good as the games were, a lot of them were kind of just like, do you need to buy a piece of hardware you don't like just to play another Donkey Kong Country game, just to play another 2D Mario, just to play a sequel to Super Mario 3D Land? The Wii U was missing exclusives that I think were like, oh, must plays. These are like, oh my god, you gotta drop everything to go play these. Many of the games, when they released, were kind of like, oh yeah, that's a good game, I'll get to it later. And I honestly feel like a big reason for that is because nobody fucking wanted this hardware. Even people who owned the Wii U were like, yeah, the hardware is kind of unfortunate. In many ways, I would say the Vita and Wii U failed for the exact opposite reasons. I think the Vita's hardware is extraordinarily good. Feels great. This is just such a cool little thing to own. Problem is, I just don't really think it had the games to back it up. Yes, there were games. There were great games on the Vita, but either they were too niche, or they were B-grade versions of PS3/PS4 games, or you could play those games somewhere else. The Wii U, nobody fucking wanted this hardware, but the game lineup was solid. There wasn't enough games, but hey, many of the games were damn good. But all right, I would like to compare these two systems within 3 different categories and then see which one wins out in the end. All right, I always kind of like to think about this. I like to do 3 categories because that keeps things snappy. And also, like I'm just rambling, man. As much as I like to structure these things out, hey, let's be honest. I'm definitely talking off the cuff right now. So I want to keep this kind of snappy. I want to consolidate a lot of different things into certain categories. And I just want to get down to basics. Which one is better in these 3 categories? I picked capabilities, which includes like the feel of the devices, the graphical capabilities, all the features of the systems. And then we have libraries. So that's talking about the games you can play on both of these devices. And then the final one is value. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean like, oh yeah, price-wise, but we can definitely consider the prices that these were at during the time in which they were being sold, but also like how much value do these platforms have? What is their legacy? What is the value of them now? Why should you buy a Vita? Why should you buy a Wii U? When I say value, I don't necessarily mean entirely monetarily. I mean like, hey, like which one of these deserves your time and attention? So let's start off with capabilities. Now, both of these systems kind of aim to do like PS3 360 level stuff. Obviously, the Vita is not as powerful as that, but, you know, with the tinier screen and a lot of the games that they put on this device, they were obviously kind of aiming for like, oh yeah, it's like those systems, but in your pocket. The Wii U, in some ways, is superior to an Xbox 360. The problem is it was notoriously harder to develop for, and it definitely had a lot of shortcomings with its hardware that ended up making it so then if you would play a multi-platform game on Wii U, it would look fine compared to the Xbox 360 version. But oftentimes, the Wii U version did not run as well. You would have some frame dips, an inconsistent frame rate, maybe a lower resolution. Now, of course, that can also be chalked up to the fact that developers obviously did not target the Wii U as their primary platform to develop for. So the Wii U version of pretty much every multi-platform game was kind of just tacked on to development in the end. Like, yeah, we can probably port that to Wii U, and then you do it, and then you just don't really care about it that much. I'm sure if the Wii U was more successful and developers took more time with their ports, we would have a lot of really solid running third-party games on Wii U. In the end, the games on Wii U, most of them, they work. And now, in some cases, specifically, you know, the only one I can think of right now is Need for Speed Most Wanted U, but that is technically the best performing home console version of that game. I think they use the PC texture pack in the Wii U version, so yeah, the Wii U version is better, but you got to understand, that is a freak accident in the grand scheme of things. Pretty much most other Wii U games, yeah, they don't run as well as their multi-platform counterparts. Now, the Vita at the time was the most powerful handheld. So similarly, we got a lot of PS3 360 games ported to the Vita, and of course, they didn't run as well as the Xbox 360 or PS3. But compared to the Wii U, I think these games had definitely more of an excuse to not run as well. But for the most part, a lot of these Vita versions of 7th generation home console games actually run really well, and they work incredibly well on the Vita. But of course, it does make it so then when we do get stuff like this, where it's like, oh, it's a handheld version of a home console game, it just feels kind of like cheap on the Vita. And eventually, a lot of those home console conversions just became fewer and fewer far between. But all things considered, I feel like the Vita's graphical capabilities weren't even really fully realized. I feel like if AAA game development for the Vita continued on for a couple more years, I think we would have seen some pretty wild stuff on this thing. The Wii U, I do kind of feel like we saw everything it was capable of in its lifespan. I don't really think it's like, oh wow, think of the possibilities we missed out on. No, I think we pretty much saw the peak of what the Wii U could do. Now, one thing I always like to bring up with the Wii U is that it is very impressive that it can run a lot of these games while simultaneously streaming the exact same image to your Wii U gamepad without the need of an internet connection, or potentially it's streaming a completely different image to the Wii U gamepad at the same time. So the game console is producing two images at once. Look at something like Star Fox Zero, and that game looks kind of fucking boring, a little simple, but like, still, I mean, like, let's give it some credit here. It's outputting two separate screens at once that you're controlling at the same time. Like, I do feel like the Wii U is a bit more powerful than some people give it credit for. You know, so it's just like, if you're comparing this with an Xbox 360, you can be like, oh yeah, the Xbox 360 version is running a bit smoother. Well, the Wii U is running at a similar frame rate. Might be a little bit worse, might be a little more all over the place, but for the most part, a lot of the games run fine. But also consider the fact that it's kind of working a little harder because, it has to account for something going on that gamepad screen there. Now, of course, does that matter in the end? Not really, because the Wii U's main gimmick here, being the gamepad screen, literally killed the console. I don't think it single-handedly killed the console. I think it was a massive element, though, because it raised the cost of this thing, and overall, I don't think Nintendo really knew what to do with it. There were some fun ideas with it. I think the best ideas that anybody ever had with the Wii U gamepad was asymmetrical multiplayer. You play a game like Nintendo Land, and you just see it right there. Now, that game is great. I love Nintendo Land. It's one of the best pack-in games, one of the most fun multiplayer games out there, but I don't think it's a big, aha moment for the Wii U, I think everybody can play it and be like, that's a lot of fun. But I don't think it really makes people like, oh, think of the possibilities. That's what a game like that needs to do for a concept like this. Think of Wii Sports. Not only was Wii Sports really fun, but it genuinely made me say, think about the possibilities with the Wii Remote. You know, the Nintendo Switch comes out and you play Breath of the Wild on that thing at launch. And when you're playing that in bed and you're playing like one of the biggest, best open world games of all time in the palm of your hands in 2017, that made me go, oh my gosh, like I want to play every game on this device. I want to see all these different home console games on the Nintendo Switch. And that was the Switch's gimmick. And honestly, I kind of felt the same way with the Nintendo Switch 2 and using the Joy-Con 2 as a mouse. I genuinely kind of thought like, wow, think about the possibilities with this. The gamepad had some fleeting moments similar to that, but I think it always missed going past the finish line with this idea. I can tell Nintendo created this concept because they needed to come up with something that could one-up the Wii Remote. Like, oh wow, what do we do after the Wii Remote? Well, it was super compelling for people that we created this wacky, unconventional controller, so we have to do something just like that again with our next console. Well, what do we do? And, you know, they came up with this, and I think they kind of thought to themselves, well, this is a great idea. Surely we'll come up with a million ideas on how to utilize it in video games, and they didn't come up with a ton. But you know what game system has a similar story of just having just a bunch of random bullshit inside of it that barely ever got utilized? Oh wow, what a surprise. The Vita definitely has a bunch of stuff crammed into it that I think even got less utilized than the Wii U's gimmicks. This rear touchpad was such a weird idea. Much like the Wii U gamepad, this felt like a gimmick that was added where, while developing this thing, they said, think of the possibilities, without ever thinking of any possibilities. Like, I think they just assumed they'd figure it out eventually, like some cool use of it. And to be fair, there are a couple of uses of the rear touchpad that are cute. The immediate one I'm thinking of is Little Deviants, you know, like that was kind of like your big gimmicky launch title for the Vita, where, I mean, like, yeah, I mean, when you use the rear touchpad, you know, you see the environment kind of, you know, like get propped up and then you can move it around and stuff. But I mean, like, that's cute to mess around with for 10 seconds, but like, what else are we doing here? Especially when the top screen is a touchscreen. So we have two touchscreens just added because, well, that's impressive for some reason. Got a front and rear camera. They included AR cards, much like the 3DS did. And like, I don't think I've seen anybody talk about the AR functionality of the Vita. Motion controls and all of that nonsense. Like, there's a bunch of stuff baked into this thing that I do feel like got even less utilized than the gimmicks of the Wii U gamepad. And similar to the gimmicks of the Wii U gamepad, they do force a lot of this stuff down your throat. I remember for Super Monkey Ball Banana Splits on the Vita, you gotta use the touchscreen for the menu. I don't know why, but to be fair, I'd rather do that than have to deal with all the times they shove the Wii U gamepad down your throat in Wii U games. There are so many Wii U games that tell you to look down at the Wii U gamepad for something that they could very easily tell you on the TV screen. The Wii U exclusive that I think showcases the biggest problem with games that overutilize the Wii U gamepad would be Paper Mario Color Splash. That game's entire battle system takes place on the gamepad, and you can't do a damn thing about it. It makes things a million times slower, a million times clunkier, and you look at the TV screen and there's so much wasted space. It's just, both of these systems have a problem with their gimmicks, but I will definitely say, I feel like games that utilized the Wii U's unique features, higher highs and lower lows, I'd say. Compared to the Vita, which there's annoyances here, and there are some games that take advantage of a lot of these features. You know, my immediate thought would be Tearaway. Tearaway is a big feature showcase for the Vita. But for the most part, I feel like a lot of the games that forcibly shoved a lot of the gimmicks down your throat on the Vita were definitely a lot more tolerable, but nothing really met the highs of the games that best utilized the Wii U's capabilities. Even though there are a lot of games on the Wii U that are so fucking annoying because they overutilize the gamepad. However, I will say this. The Wii U gamepad feels awesome in the hands. I love how this controller feels. The buttons are all great. I do honestly really like the grips. It feels good in the hands. Everything just works. I'd say my only problem is going from the shoulder buttons to the triggers. It's kind of a decent hike for your finger to make there. But overall, like, I always like holding and using this controller. It may not feel like super premium, but I don't think it feels cheap. The Vita feels like one of the coolest, most premium devices I own, and it feels good in the hands. I love these grips on the back. It just feels so nice to hold on to. The buttons are very, very clicky. The analog sticks, there's not a ton of movement on these. They are still very small, but they are very welcome additions here. Way better than the nub on the PSP, and you only got one of those. The shoulder buttons work well. I wouldn't say the buttons here feel better than the Wii U gamepad, but, you know, to be fair here, this is a portable device. I think buttons like this make a lot more sense. I'd probably say I prefer holding the Wii U gamepad, but this is still really damn nice. So overall, considering all of this stuff, I feel like the PS Vita is more impressive graphically, of course, keeping in mind that it is a handheld. I feel like most of its gimmicks are less inspired than the Wii U gamepad. However, I feel like they're not as intrusive. And while the gamepad does feel more comfortable to hold, I think the PS Vita feels much more premium, and it still feels pretty damn comfortable to hold. So with all that in mind, I'm giving round one to the Vita. Next up, let's talk about the library of both of these consoles. Now, both of them do have an extensive library of actual, like, exclusive games, but also we have a lot of legacy games that were at least available on both of these consoles in their heyday when their shops were a little more actively available. Wii U is backwards compatible with basically the entirety of the Wii library, in addition to Virtual Console for NES, Super Nintendo, N64, Game Boy Advance, and then when you would go into Wii mode, you could access the Virtual Consoles available on the Wii Shop channel there. So that included stuff like Sega Genesis, Master System, Commodore 64. The PlayStation Vita is a bit of an interesting case, as you can play PSP games on here, digital only though. So it pretty much kind of came down to what PSP games were made digitally available back in the day. Those are available on PS Vita. So not every PSP game is on here, but, you know, a decent chunk of them. They also released PS1 games on PSN, so there's a lot of PS1 games you can play on Vita. Plus, that's all in addition to the remote play functionality of the Vita, where pretty much most PS4 games can be playable via remote play on the Vita through Wi-Fi. Now, I'm not really sure if that should count as a part of the library, going like, oh yeah, Grand Theft Auto 5 is available on the Vita, you know, with like at least a billion asterisks after that statement. But the point is, both of these game consoles could play a huge variety of games. But which one has the better library? Well, it may be my Nintendo baby boy brain talking here, but I do think the exclusives on Wii U were better than the Vitas. The Vita had some great games, but I think the Wii U had better must-have AAA games from that era. I mean, let's be honest, look at all the Wii U games ported to Nintendo Switch and how well they sold on that platform, and then take a look at all of the Vita games that were ported to other platforms, and look at how well they did. I love Gravity Rush. Gravity Rush is one of my favorite games ever, honestly. I love Gravity Rush, and that was a Vita exclusive, and then they brought it over to PS4, and not a lot of people gave a damn. Now, I don't really think that says anything about Gravity Rush's quality, but I do think that says a decent amount about, like, how many people give a shit. You can have a super high quality thing, but that doesn't mean people are really gonna give a damn. The Wii U had Mario Kart 8, Super Smash Bros. For Wii U, Super Mario Maker, Splatoon, Bayonetta 2. Many of these were like games of the year when they released. And even if the Wii U didn't sell like anything overall, a lot of these games did sell consoles. And when you go over to the Nintendo Switch, many of them sold tens of millions of copies. In my opinion, when it comes to kind of those AAA exclusives on the Vita, I think Gravity Rush is one of them. I think Tearaway is another one. Freedom Wars, sure, that's a solid game. But then a lot of the other games that at least Sony put out and a lot of the bigger companies put out, many of them were like cool, I guess, but it was more so kind of like, oh yeah, cool, Resistance is on the Vita. Oh yeah, Killzone's on the Vita, great. It's like stuff that was cool if you already had a Vita, but no reason to buy the Vita. The Wii U had a similar problem, but I think the biggest issue was that nobody wanted this damn console. The games were solid, but not solid enough to warrant buying this clunky piece of crap. Then when you put those games on hardware that people actually like, then they sell like gangbusters. A lot of the exclusives on the Vita eventually made their way over to better selling consoles, but many of them just didn't make the same splash that the Wii U games that jumped off of the Wii U did. But I mean, there was some solid stuff over here. I mean, Persona 4 Golden, that was like the definitive version of Persona 4, and for a while there, you needed a Vita to play it. The Danganronpa series, that was big, but a lot of these are definitely nicher titles in the grand scheme of things, and I feel like the Wii U had a good variety of big blockbuster exclusives for everybody, but then also some of those smaller titles that appeal to a nicher audience. Something like Tokyo Mirage Sessions, Bayonetta 2, Xenoblade Chronicles X. That, plus the fact that you had Wii backwards compatibility and you could use those same Wii discs. You had the Wii Virtual Console and the Wii U Virtual Console. And yeah, you compare it to what the Vita had, which was a lot, but I do think when it comes to the library, I think the Wii U takes this round. Which brings us to the final round. So hey, both of these have 1 point each. Now going into the final round, it all comes down to this. Which one of these has the most value? Well, the Vita initially launched for about $250 here in North America. You could get the $300 3G model. Nobody did that. Eventually, with the Slim Vita redesign, I believe it went down to $200. But one of the biggest slaps in the face about the Vita were the memory cards. You basically needed a memory card to do anything on one of these. And the prices were absurd. You know, at least with the 3DS, that took standard SD cards. The Vita took proprietary PS Vita memory cards, and even for the smallest size, the prices were just way too high. So if we're talking value, that was awful value right there, you know. It was already pretty expensive. I mean, like, originally the 3DS cost $250, so, you know, the initial price point was incredibly competitive, especially when, like, this was just, like, so much more powerful. But you factor in the price of the memory cards, pretty lame, especially when the 3DS did get a price drop to, like, $170 before this guy actually launched in February 2012. Now, thankfully, with the Slim Vita redesign, that was not only cheaper, but it came with like a gigabyte of storage, like baked in, which, okay, that's like peanuts. That's practically nothing, but at the very least, like it made it so then if you're buying game cards for the Vita, you can at the very least save your game. See, pretty much all Vita games have to have this memory required little notice on the box art because, yeah, like to do anything in these games, you needed to get a memory card. So, pretty dumb, but Sony kind of like fixed it later down the line. And these days, like, yeah, if you're gonna get a Vita, the memory cards aren't gonna be as stupid to buy, but still, that was always annoying. The Wii U, on the other hand, it initially launched for $300 for the 8GB model, then $350 for the deluxe set, which included a whole bunch of garbage. It was pretty obvious that the deluxe set was the way to go. I mean, it was only $50 more, and you were getting a copy of Nintendo Land with that, which on its own was a $60 game. So my question is, even if you weren't interested in Nintendo Land, why the hell wouldn't you get the deluxe set? But less than a year later, Nintendo announced a price drop for the deluxe set, which brought that price down to $300. They practically discontinued the basic set around that time. I think it would have been smart if they brought the basic set down to $250, but I bet they are already kind of taking a bit of a loss on things by bringing that deluxe set down there. So I think, you know, like if they could have brought the basic set down to $250, they would have, but you know, I'm sure they were just like, nah, let's cut the basic set and let's just make the deluxe set the main thing on offer here. And yeah, I mean, throughout the rest of its life, the Wii U always had like a game included. Like they would offer new bundles every year. You know, in 2013, they introduced the new Super Mario Bros. U and Luigi U bundle. Then a year later in 2014, they introduced the Mario 3D World bundle, which included 3D World and Nintendo Land. And I think that was probably the best deal there. I mean, like I think Nintendo Land is a great pack-in title in addition to 3D World, which was definitely up there as one of the best games on the console. And, you know, they did a couple of other game-specific bundles like Mario Maker, Splatoon, Smash Brothers, and Splatoon. But I think the main bundle from like 2015 onwards that they offered till the end of the system's life was Mario Kart 8, which makes sense. But the Wii U never got like a redesign or a price drop past the $300 price point. They pretty much just rode that out till the Nintendo Switch released, which that console also cost $300. Which, yeah, that was pretty nuts. You know, looking at it, in retrospect, it's pretty obvious that the Nintendo Switch almost felt more like a replacement for the Wii U rather than its true successor in some cases. Like, it was its true successor, but, like, I mean, like, it cost the exact same amount, had similar graphical capabilities. It was almost like Nintendo was like, yeah, let's do this instead. Just get this out of here. I do think that does pose the question of, like, which one was the better buy during its era. You know, for full disclosure, I owned a Wii U throughout that generation. I didn't own a PS Vita until years down the line. I think I actually got a PS Vita around like 2020 or so. But, you know, I mean, obviously, it does kind of matter, like, what you were buying these for. Because I think if you were buying a PS Vita because you wanted a home console to go, I do kind of think you'd be a little disappointed. It's like, yeah, you got those big AAA games for like the first year, and then after that, pretty much just became like an indie machine. That's most of the stuff that you could get on the Vita. And to be fair, that's most of the good stuff that was coming out on the Vita after that point. And, you know, to be fair, you can say the same thing about the Wii U. The Wii U was a solid indie machine as well. Lots of good indies released on the Wii U. It was obvious that Nintendo really did kind of foster a great relationship with independent developers during this era, because that's kind of all they had. Those were the developers that were happy to support Nintendo during this time, which was a similar deal to the Vita. I remember, like, years down the line, like 2016, 2017, even when, like, things were pretty much done with this, Sony brought the Vita out on stage during events like PlayStation Experience, and they were just kind of promoting it as like this independent game bonanza. Like, it's like, this is the perfect place for games like this. They were happy to promote it as such at that time. But overall, even though the Vita did sell better, I do kind of feel like more people were satisfied with their Wii U purchase and played it more throughout that era. I think Nintendo supported the Wii U a lot more with bigger games that warranted like everybody kind of like dusting off their Wii U, playing it right there, than Sony did with the Vita. Now, of course, for the enthusiasts, yeah, there was a lot of stuff you could do with your Vita and keep playing your Vita for, but I feel like the Wii U was still a bit of a better value during that time. However, let's take a look at things these days. I honestly kind of think you would get more out of picking up a Vita than you would picking up a Wii U. I think there's far more exclusive games that you can still only really play on the Vita. I think the hardware is far more compelling to pick up these days. I think you can do a lot with the Wii U if you hack it, but the same can be said about the Vita. I just honestly feel like this device is far more fun to dick around with these days. The Wii U is novel, but most of the games that you would want to play on it aren't exclusive to the Wii U anymore. And yes, that happened with the Vita as well, but I feel like there's still more experiences on the Vita, even if it comes down to multi-platform games. Multi-platform games that have a Vita port, I think, are far more interesting to play these days. I mean, like, name another device that's this small. I think it still has value there. I mean, like, you have, like, Street Fighter Cross Tekken, Mortal Kombat, Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3, like, 3 big fighting games that got Vita versions. Like, I think the version on Vita is still interesting to pop in, play it. I think there's more reason to do that than there would be to play any of the third-party games that are on Wii U. Yeah, you can see what's going on with the second screen, but overall, it's just gonna be kind of just like, oh, it's the Xbox 360 game with, like, features missing and frame rate issues. Yeah, a lot of multi-platform games are the same way on Vita, but this is a truly portable device, a pocket-sized portable device. Even compared to the Nintendo Switch, this is so much smaller. So honestly, I do feel like when it comes to value, even though I think the Wii U had higher value in its day, it's honestly kind of neck and neck. So if it's already that close, and I think these days there's far more value to a PlayStation Vita than a Wii U, I think the Vita takes this round. And yes, I do think the PlayStation Vita is better than the Wii U. Listen, I do like both of these things. I am pretty sick of the Wii U at this point. I mean, like, I talk about it all the time. I've experienced it through and through. I've gone through this generation multiple times for research. I lived through it, and then I had to go through it multiple more times for all the retrospectives I've done on this damn thing. And throughout it all, even though I still like this stupid console, the Vita, I think, is just a much better device. The Wii U, I feel like, was a failure from the start. The Vita, like I said before, I think is an excellent piece of hardware, and it has a ton of great games on it. I do think the Wii U has a better overall library, but I don't want to undersell how good a lot of the games on the Vita are and how cool they are to experience. Even if I kind of razzed it a bit for a lot of its exclusives being just B-grade versions of PS3, PS4 franchises, they're still cool to experience. I mean, even just still playing Uncharted Golden Abyss on this thing is neat. It may not be at the same level as an Uncharted 2, but I mean, it doesn't need to be. I mean, like, it's still kind of a novel experience. So, congratulations, PlayStation Vita. You're the winning failure.